Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to talk more about some anticipated releases coming out in 2025. You know why? It's almost 2025 and I have too many anticipated books to do it in one video. The authors I'm going to talk about today are authors that I haven't read enough of their books yet to know if I love their writing enough, or they're authors I've read all their books but they don't write enough 4 or 5 star books for me to want to pre-buy all their books. They're authors I want to take their books out from the library first, and if I like that particular book by them, I will go buy it later. So these are still authors that write well, they write to my taste, but just not all the time. I just don't like to own a lot of books, and in case these 2025 anticipated releases are only 3 stars or less for me, I don't want to own them. If I ever read a book and I own it and it's 3 stars or less, I usually donate it to the library anyway, because I won't reread a book if I don't rate it 4 or 5 stars. So it just sits on my shelf and no one will ever enjoy it ever again unless I give it away. Therefore, these are books I'm going to take out from the library in 2025. And some of them I have already got in line for, although I find sometimes the library will not pre-order these books until like a month before they come out. So I can't get in line for some of these until closer to their release date, but there are a few that I am in line for as we speak. So the first book is called Girls on the Rise. It comes out January 7th. It's by Amanda Gorman. Amanda Gorman wrote and spoke her speech / poem, I think it was a poem, at Joe Biden's inauguration. I believe it was that event. And I really enjoyed it, so I ordered the book version of it, read it. I liked a lot of her lines, and I took a lot of the quotes from her speech, from her poem, and it made me want to keep reading her. And she's written some children's books. She's written more poetry. I've rated some of her children's books highly. I rated her poetry highly, but I haven't quite read enough of her books yet to know if I want to automatically buy her books. Therefore, I'm going to get her next book from the library. And this Girls on the Rise book is another poetry book. In the synopsis, I'm not going to read all the the entire synopses of every book I'm going to talk about today. I'm just going to read parts of the synopses that speak to me, that really get my interest. So for Amanda Gorman's poetry book coming out, one line that sticks out is reminding us how girls have shaped our history while marching boldly into the future. Sounds like it's going to talk about what women have done for the world in the past and where they're going, what more women can bring in the future. I like inspiring stuff like that. I hope I rate this 4 or 5 stars. I'm looking forward to connecting with Amanda Gorman's writing again. I really hope I can get some quotes from her again. Usually I always can. She's a very good writer. She's really good about putting experiences into words that I've never thought about before. And then in March, this one's high up there for my excitement. It is another Avatar: The Last Airbender comic. This one's called Ashes of the Academy. This one is about Zuko. So, well, not entirely Zuko. Zuko's in it, but it's mainly about Zuko's half-sister. I haven't rated every Avatar comic 4 or 5 stars. I actually have only rated the comics that have Zuko in it 4 or 5 stars. So I rated The Search 5 stars. And that's the one where Zuko finally finds his mom again, because that was like one of the biggest mysteries in the Avatar: The Last Airbender series, is where is Zuko and Azula's mom? And that comic series answered that question. So we find out that Zuko's mom has started a new family. She has lost her memories of Zuko and Azula and her previous life, started this new family. Through the course of the search, she gets her memories back, and Zuko learns that he still has his mom and he has a half-sister. This book is kind of a continuation of that. It's now exploring Zuko as Fire Lord a little more, and his half-sister Ki has enrolled in the Academy for Girls. This Fire Nation Academy is known for being very harsh and very strict, and Zuko is worried that Ki might develop a personality and tendencies closer to Azula, his other sister. And we all know that Azula was pretty ruthless and made lots of antisocial, dangerous choices that harmed others. But May, we all remember May, Zuko's girlfriend, is an academy teacher. So Zuko's hoping that May can keep a watchful eye over Ki and keep her on the right path. This is really interesting to me because I like the topic of nature versus nurture, and that sounds kind of what this comic is exploring here, because how much of Azula was nature, just how she naturally was, or nurture, in that the Fire Nation helped create this ruthless dictator, dangerous person. I also hope Azula's in it. I hope we do learn more about Azula, or at least the concept of her, because that has always interested me too. Zuko and Azula, close-ish in age, same parents, how did they turn out so different? We'll find out in March 2025. So obviously I'm looking forward to seeing Zuko and how he's balancing being Fire Lord and also protecting his new family. But I am cautious about, and this is part of the reason I have not rated very many Avatar comics very high, is I find that sometimes the plot gets tied up in almost too perfect of a bow by the end. And that reason I like the Avatar The Last Airbender series is there were some very ideal, perfect endings for the crew, but they were, when it really mattered in the main plot, every time the gang succeeded, it wasn't always perfect. There was always something they got wrong, or they solved one problem, but now there's a new problem to solve. So I appreciated that imperfectness that is true to life. I also find that sometimes in the comics, the secondary characters feel super one-dimensional. And in the show, there were some that would feel one-dimensional as well. But in the comics, these one-dimensional secondary characters, it's pretty obvious they only exist to fill a role. It's almost like their dialogue is like, here, I'm here to be antagonist for 10 pages, and then I will stop being antagonist after page 20. I'm worried that might happen, but I'm hoping not, because usually the comics with Zuko in it in the past, I haven't found that, or Zuko's plot and character arc has been so interesting that I can overlook the secondary characters feeling not realistic to me. And then in April, Emily Henry is back with her book called A Great Big Beautiful Life. Emily Henry is an author that when she releases a book I love it. But then sometimes, 50% of the time, she'll release a book that I don't connect very much with at all. She was on my automatic buy list in the past, but now I have found that I've only rated some of her books 2 or 3 stars. Enough for books 2 or 3 stars that I don't want to automatically buy her books until I know I'll like it. And that happened with her one she just released in 2024. Funny story, I got it from the library first, loved it, and then I bought it after. Happy Place, the book she released the year before, last year, I only rated that one, I can't remember if I rated it 2 or 3, but I did not rate it higher than 3 stars. I can't even tell you what happened in the book. Like, as soon as I finished it, I forgot everything. I remember it feeling slow for me. I remember not much happening. I feel like the characters were only in like 3 places in the entire book and nothing much changed. It just wasn't my style. So that's why she's on my get from the library. If I love it, I'll buy it. If not, the library gets to keep it for other people to read. So in A Great Big Beautiful Life, it's a really long synopsis, and I almost didn't cut any of it because so much of the synopsis I need to say in order to communicate all the parts that intrigue me. But the main character is called Alice Scott. She is a writer. She wants her big writing break. And then there's this other character named Hayden. He's a Pulitzer Prize winning author, so he's ahead of her in writing recognition. They are both sent to a balmy little crescent island for the same reason, to write the biography of a woman no one has seen in years. This woman's name is Margaret Ives. She claims to be that person. They say the word claims. I'm wondering if maybe she's not this actual famous person they want to talk to, but that'll be a cool plot twist if that's true. When Margaret invites them both for 1 month trial period, so I'm assuming they'll both write about her for a month and she'll pick one in the end. But the problem is, and this is the part that really intrigues me, Margaret is only giving each of them pieces of her story. So whatever Alice gets about her life, Hayden doesn't get, and they're not allowed to communicate. So they're each going to have to write a piece about Margaret's life, but only parts of it. So I'm really interested how they're going to do that. Do they have to fill in the blanks that Margaret doesn't tell them? Do they only tell the pieces they know, which makes Margaret sound like a completely different person depending on who's telling the story? I think this is a really good book for showing and exploring the role perspective plays in portraying who a person is. And the last line of the synopsis says, it's becoming abundantly clear that their story, just like the tale Margaret's spinning, could be a mystery, tragedy, or love ballad, depending on who's telling it. I'm looking forward to what Emily Henry does well, even in the books I don't like of hers very much, but she's always great at communicating meaningful messages around personal growth and romantic relationships, in that the characters grow as individuals and their individual character growth contributes to the romantic relationship, which I love. And I always feel like the romantic interest, it's very obvious that they have respect for each other. Emily Henry is, maybe not in the beginning, but when they do commit to finally admitting that they like each other and they're in a romantic relationship, that through their actions and their words, it's very clear that they respect who the other person is. And that's a must for me to enjoy a romance. One thing I'm worried about, and is part of the reason I haven't liked some of Emily Henry's books, is if the plot feels a little too vibey and not enough plot. I found that in Happy Place. It did feel like, let's explore the vibes of us being in this place and being with each other, but then nothing happened. Like I just didn't feel like enough things externally happened to the characters to push the plot forward and keep me interested. And I like plot. I like plot-driven books. And then also in May, Cover Story by Mhairi McFarlane comes out. And Mhairi McFarlane is an example of an author whose books I look forward to all the time, even though I've rated almost all her books 3 stars. There is one I've rated 4. So she's a consistent, pretty much a 3-star author for me, but they're a strong 3 stars. I look forward to reading every one of her books once, even if it's only once. I have a great time reading them, but there's still enough that is missing that I can't rate it higher than 3 stars. Like, I see so many ways it could match my tastes more, but I did rate her book just last night. I rated that one 4 stars. So in this book coming out in May by Mhairi McFarlane, A Cover Story, it's about a character named Belle who works at a national paper, so she sounds like she's a journalist. She works with an ambitious colleague named Aaron and a new intern named Connor. He's a 30-something man, and their meeting gets off on the wrong foot. It says she's patronizing and he's hostile, so they don't seem to vibe. They don't seem to like each other very much. Then Belle gets a tip of a really big story that she can cover, and Connor gets caught in the crossfire. So before they know it, they have to convince people they're a couple, and a couple in love at that. If they mess up, Belle's cover is blown and the biggest story she'll ever land will disappear, along with the justice for its sources. That's interesting. Why do they have to fake date? How does that give them an in? And it sounds like it's a big story, probably a criminal-ish story, because it says that if Belle doesn't do this right, the people she's talking to won't get justice, her sources won't get justice. So sounds like there's high stakes, and we know I like high stakes. Fast plot, high stakes. And will they get together? Will Connor and her get together? I am looking forward to McFarlane discussing or showing how her main character balances her career versus romance. Those sound like they're prominent features in this plot. The main character's personal goals versus her relationship goals. That's one thing Mhairi McFarlane does very well, which is why I enjoy reading all her books at least once. So one thing, when I read Mhairi McFarlane books, sometimes she'll have the main character, quite often actually, the main character will be in a different relationship in the beginning, and it's not a good one. And by the end, they're in a different relationship with a new man. And usually it's because in the beginning they're in a poor relationship because the main character has not done the growth necessary to understand their own needs and goals in life and prioritize those. So often the romantic interest boyfriend in the beginning is not that great. So in contrast, when she gets together with the new guy in the end, we see a more respectful, less toxic relationship. So McFarlane communicates character growth very well. She communicates her characters make important realizations about their own needs. And then she communicates those characters making efforts to draw boundaries in their life that allows them to meet their own needs before moving on to a new relationship. So it's never the new relationship that is the magical answer to the character's life. The character is their own answer to their problems. The character makes their own realizations, solves their own problems, and then chooses a new romantic interest that may have supported them along the way or offers support in the future and matches their own personal goals and life goals a little better. I am cautious about how McFarlane can also have a slightly slower pace to her books, because again, I like fast pace. I sometimes find that certain plot points might be a little repetitive. Like sometimes I'll feel like we've had a very similar scene 3-ish times, or characters doing a similar thing or having a similar conversation 3-ish times before we move on, whereas I think it could be summarized into one. There was many times when she can build up tension well, but because the tension was stuck at that same level for too long, we did too many similar scenes. By the time we get to the payoff, the tension has lessened for me. It just was too long with no changes. And that's it. That's my list for 2025 anticipated releases that I'm going to get from the library. There are a few authors that, if they announce a book coming out in 2025, they will also be on this list, but I haven't heard anything as of today. Sarah J. Maas is one. I think she has one supposed to be coming out in 2025, but I haven't heard anything. I do know her next book is supposed to be the next ACOTAR book. Leigh Bardugo, if she's got one coming out, I'll read. John Green, Chanel Miller, Neil Gaiman, Helen Huang. If any of those authors have something coming out, I'll read it. So the question I want to leave you with is, like normal, I want to hear your thoughts. Have you read any of these authors or any of these books? What did you think of them? And with that, I'm gonna sign off, and I'll see you in my next video.